So my name is Catherine Holsworth. I'm a program manager on the Windows team, specifically focused on enterprise and security. I'm a Kiwi. Hopefully you can all tell that. I'm told I still sound like a New Zealander. And it's great to be in an audience who won't mistake me for an Aussie, which is what usually happens to me. Anyway, together with Simon May today, we're going to run through an overview of Windows 10 for the enterprise. It's a pretty high-level trip through some of the new security features and how we're thinking about Windows 10 in the enterprise. There's lots of deep dive sessions throughout the week with Michael Niehaus, with Simon, and some others talking in much more depth, but this one here will give you an overview to figure out what you want to see next. So what we're hearing, first thing I think it's worth calling out is at the start of Windows 10, we did spend a lot of time listening to our customers, listening to what people like yourselves were saying. After being somewhat locked down before Windows 10, we really started to dig in, listen, and request your feedback. And I want to really start off by saying thank you for all the feedback you've graciously given us. Without your feedback, we couldn't have built such a interesting Windows 10 product, and we're continuously adjusting all the way through Windows 10. Even today, we're adjusting and really listening to feedback, as Laura talked about last night. So really, please keep the feedback coming. We want to help you innovate on your innovative businesses, and to know what you need in a product will really help us help you. And we want to know the good and the not so good, of course. So you all know that work is not really a location. It's not really a place. It's wherever you feel good about getting that work done at that time. It could be commuting, it could be in the park, it could be at your office desk, or it could be before breakfast, sitting at your dining room table. And it says, and the research says that 56% of the people actually send their first email before they get to the office. I simply can't believe that number. I'm sure it's got to be more, but I think that's 56% of the people who remember what they did before they had their first coffee. So really, with BYOD, bring your own devices around the world, people are likely using devices from wherever it suits them and from whatever location suits them. And so it's all about the mobility of the experience. And so let me dig around here. I should have had my phone. And when we think about the mobility of the experience, we don't think about the phone. It's not about a particular device that happens to be easy to fit in your pocket. It's really about the mobility of the experience for the person. Whatever device I happen to want to be on, I have to have my experience on that device when I need it, when I want it, not just around one particular device that I use. So if you look at what information workers do, information workers work from 3 or more locations. They use 3 or more devices. If I think about how many devices I use probably 4 or 5 devices depending on what I'm doing and where I am. And information workers really use 7 or more apps for work, so an incredible number of apps for work. And these may be apps that you are not purchasing for them. They may be apps that they are purchasing for themselves. So of course, with the mobility of the experience and the mobility of location, obviously, the data needs to be mobile as well. And really, that's quite a scary thought for people such as yourselves who have spent all of this time trying to secure that data in some central location, some data center somewhere, perhaps on a particular device. But really, we need to make sure that the apps and the data is also mobile as well. And if you look at how people use these apps, quite often they'll use data or data from apps that they purchase themselves. And also, more likely than not, people are starting to access sensitive corporate data from their own PC or their own device. And so really we need to be thinking deeply about securing that data as well as securing the devices, whatever devices they happen to be on. So in terms of the IT people, we're all really living in a thriving digital economy. And this economy has lots of benefits, but it also has a ton of challenges. And the IT people in your organization are really going to be thinking about how they mix together this mobile tapestry, this tapestry of devices, this tapestry of apps, this tapestry of data, and trying to knit this together so the users all have a delightful personal experience, but more important that the data that you are trying to protect remains safe. And also separate from the user's data, because you do want to encourage people to use their own devices so they can be productive wherever they are. So in Windows 10, we're really thinking about how to knit together this tapestry end to end. So in Windows 10, we've unified the operating system. Joe talked about that a little bit last night at the keynote. We now have a single platform for all of your devices. A single platform from IoT device through the phone, all the way through to something like Surface Hub or desktops with mouse and keyboard, tablets with touch, etc. Really everything from a device that you can fit in your pocket to a device that you can hang on your wall. Everything is running on the same operating system. So we've got one platform from the kernel file system all the way through to the app platform. So as IT, that means you only need to think about one security infrastructure. You need to think about one device management infrastructure. You need to think about one encryption infrastructure. You need to think about one log-on experience that your users have to do. And this will help you drive down your cost. No longer do you need to try and learn multiple different security models depending on what device form factor you happen to be trying to deploy or your users want to use. Second thing we've been doing with this one platform here in this unified OS is to have one store. Some of the biggest feedback we had from our customers was it's really complicated to have to submit applications into lots of different stores and really complicated for users to try and get to different stores to get those applications. So we've got one store for all the apps, all the content, all the updates. So your developers have one place to go to submit content, whether it be an enterprise app or whether it be a consumer app. And then best of all, you have one place for your users to go and pick up those, to pick up the applications they need. And we've done some work to integrate the business store into the consumer store as well in a way that makes it easy for users to go to one place to get both consumer and enterprise applications. Secondly, lastly, we've focused on one experience across all of these devices. But better said, it's really one familiar experience. Obviously, you have to have the experience tailored for the form factor. We all know that it's not practical to have the same experience on a small device that fits in your pocket or a device that is perhaps a mouse and keyboard. So we really are tailoring the experiences for the different for the different form factors. So if you're using a large screen, a PC using a mouse might be something that you want to use, or perhaps it's touch. But if you're using HoloLens, there is a different experience needed. But in terms of teaching your users, it's a very familiar experience. If you go to set up management, it's a familiar experience. If you go to set up Windows Hello, very similar experience. So this is all obviously great for both consumers, but also enterprise users and enterprise IT. So now I want to drill a little deeper and talk about the enterprise features that are built on top of this one platform, one store, and one experience. So first of all, the promises we're delivering really lines up with 4 different promises or investment areas for enterprise and Windows 10. And this has really helped us focus on what we're going to deliver. First of all, we're focusing on helping businesses protect against modern security threats. So there's never been a time as right as now to really think deeply about protecting against modern security threats. Second thing we're focusing on is enabling businesses to manage continuous innovation. This talks to both Windows as a service. It also talks to how you need to innovate on your businesses to keep driving forward whatever it is your businesses do, and we want to make sure you have the latest and greatest to manage that, as well as through some of the management infrastructure you need. Third thing is, how do you enable your users to be more productive, and how do you enable your IT organizations to be more productive? And Joe talked a lot about the user experience last night. He showed Continuum. He showed some of the really cool apps with Continuum for phone, the unified Windows applications, etc. But this also talks to your IT and how we want to make sure that you as an IT organization, or your IT organizations, find deploying Windows much simpler, and so you can also be more productive. And then the last pillar or promise that we've been thinking about is innovative devices for your business. And so you got a little glimpse of that in the last slide with HoloLens, with Surface Hub, from the IoT devices all the way through to various PCs. And you'll hear more about some of the great devices and lineup we have in the near future. So in this talk, I'm going to focus mostly on the first and the second of these bullets. And then if I get time at the end, we will move in and talk about the last two. So protecting against modern security threats. Security really has been one of the top priorities for us in Windows 10. And it's really worth spending a little bit of time talking about some of the security investments. So there's never really been a time when securing the OS is more important, and likewise, there's never really been a time when securing your data is more important. And it's really, really hard to overstate the challenges that businesses are facing today when it comes to security threats. And we really need to start deploying and thinking about new technologies and new ways to try and get ahead of those attackers. But at the same time, we're really focused on ensuring that we do deliver a beautiful user experience, because the security really needs to fall out of the way of users so that users can get on and have that personalized, delightful experience with whatever device they happen to use. So have a quick look at how attacks have evolved over time, and there are some fairly disturbing trends. If you think back to 10 or 15 years ago, the attackers were really kind of kids and people having just a little bit of fun, out for a bit of mischief, playing around a little bit to see what might happen, and then they'd unleash it on the internet and really see what would happen. But they were just out for mischief and a little bit of fun, so that's okay. We were allowed to have a little bit of fun, right? Yeah? A little bit of fun? Yeah. So the second thing, then next they really came along to be more organized crime. People really focused on making a little bit of money, out for a bit of profit, and you know, in the past, these kind of attacks, if you built your walls a bit higher, like you had the right firewalls, you had the right security systems and infrastructure in place, people probably wouldn't have bothered with you. They'll just go along to the next business who don't have the proper walls up, and they're not, and the walls aren't quite so high or not quite so difficult. And so those attacks were kind of expensive and a bit annoying to clean up, but you kind of got clean relatively quickly, and then you'd move on with life. But now, since about 2012, we've seen some fairly scary attacks and cyber criminals who are very sophisticated. They're very well organized. They've got a lot of money and resources, and they really are focused on getting what it is they want from you. And these exploits are increasingly focused on causing damage, embarrassment, and disruption. And it's no longer, you know, you think about the security attacks, the places you really need to protect the banks and governments and what have you. But nowadays we see in the news over and over again of other institutions that end up being attacked, and sort of unexpected institutions in many ways. But if somebody has something that you want, or you manage to annoy somebody in a high enough place, people are going to focus on these cyber attacks and cyber destructions and getting what it is they want from you, no matter how secure and how high those walls are. So looking at this evolving security landscape, we've made some key security investments to help you manage three key things. First of all, identity protection. We've focused a lot on trying to help you protect identity, information protection, protecting all of that information that is flying around in this mobile tapestry. And then last, device protection. How do we focus on protecting the device? Because we need to move some of the protection to the endpoints and to the cloud away from perhaps a secure data center somewhere. So identity protection, really identity is the first place and the easiest place for attackers to start. If I have your identity, I have everything about you, and I can go about my business and have quite a lot of fun with your information and perhaps your bank accounts and whatever else you're doing at your work. So there's general agreement in the security space that getting rid of passwords and replacing passwords is something that we all need to go and do, because some of the cyber attacks really do just start from something as easy as a phishing attack, where I persuade you to give me your password, probably to help my grandma escape from some name your favourite country, but there's phishing attacks happen all the time. It's very costly for businesses to manage passwords. It's very costly to manage password resets. It turns out it's surprisingly difficult for people to remember a 4-digit PIN. They forget it all the time. Least of all, some sort of secure password, even more difficult. I'm constantly getting password resets from my team at work because they simply can't remember that password they put in 25 times a day. They manage to forget it. And it's a huge hassle for business, for people. I mean, it just drives me bananas having to put my password into my PC every day, whereas it's much easier to have the PC just recognize me and open. So the other thing which is interesting and scary in some ways is users on average have about 6 passwords. So that means that your work password and probably your bank password is also used on that random insecure shopping site or some other random insecure website. And so the attackers will go after trying to figure out how to guess your password at some of those sites you go to. So really you can't give away your password or give it up by mistake if you don't have it. Simple as that. And so it is a huge undertaking to have people give up their to remove passwords. And we're teaming with security experts across the industry as part of the FIDO Alliance. So we with some other large companies are driving a real effort to give away to get rid of passwords so that we both protect consumers, but we also help protect businesses. So Microsoft Passport is really the start of the journey to move away from passwords to strong cryptographic credentials that are bound to the hardware of this device. So now when I log into my work, so last night I did the demo where I logged into my Azure Active Directory for the first time, and I got my phone call to have my second factor authentication. As soon as I authenticated with that second factor authentication, a strong cryptographic credential was pushed down to my machine and it was plumbed into the TPM of that device. And so now, next time I log in off that device to my work, all I need is that device and the PIN to unlock that device. If an attacker gets hold of my password somehow, then what they need to do is not only have this device, but they also need my password, or they also need to have another second factor of authentication to log in. So traditionally people have used smart cards as a second factor authentication, but with Microsoft Passport, it's the PIN, something I know, and the strong cryptographic credential that is stored on the TPM of this device. And smart cards is a terrible user experience. It's awful trying to put a dongle or some kind of smart card reader on the end of a phone. And I always happen to forget my smart card, and it turns out the little printout badge that we're given at Microsoft when we forget our smart card doesn't actually help me very much logging in. And so we're trying to figure out how we can help users get second factor authentication with something they have, which is their PC, and something they know. Windows Hello, so what happens if we could make the something we know be something that we have on our body? And that's where Windows Hello comes into it. We're making it much easier in Windows 10 to unlock that device with something we know with strong enterprise biometrics. So we've added on top of Microsoft Passport biometrics, so I can unlock that Microsoft Passport with my face, with an iris, or a fingerprint. And this is really a beautiful and delightful experience, and it's a surprising experience as exactly how fast I can unlock and get going, but I can also have a very fast, productive experience, and I never, ever forget my face. I might forget my makeup, but I never forget my face, and I've always got my hands and my iris with me. So, we've worked on, with Windows Hello, Microsoft Passport to provide hardware-based multi-factor authentication. So once we have proven that the person behind the keyboard is actually the person we think is behind the keyboard, we then need to make sure that we prevent attacks such as pass-the-hash attacks, where if you happen to have malware on your device, that an attacker cannot get the credentials that are stored on your device and then move laterally through your organization from one machine to another machine using a pass-the-hash attack. So in the past, whenever a credential was needed, the main operating system would pass that credential to whatever needed that credential. In Windows 10, we have created a feature called Credential Guard. And what Credential Guard does is it's essentially a Hyper-V which is running outside the main operating system, and all the credentials that are used are then stored in that Hyper-V, and whenever a credential is used or needed, it is then passed up to that asking website or whatever is asking for that credential, so that it's stored in the TPM and locked outside of the main OS. So if you happen to get some kind of malware running on that device, those credentials are stored elsewhere and in a secure location, which is difficult to get. So we've got hardware-based credential isolation to help protect corporate identities. So it's making it incredibly difficult for attackers to get going in the natural first way of trying to take hold of your identity for malicious reasons. So the next thing we're focusing on is how is it we help you protect sensitive data, protect sensitive organizational data. And so we provided a demo last night of enterprise data protection. And what we are doing, enterprise data protection really has two main jobs. Job number one is to encrypt corporate data so that wherever that corporate data is, whether it be on this PC, whether it be on a SD card somewhere, whether it be stored in the cloud, that data is protected. I like to think about it as BitLocker for files. So that encryption that you're used to protect the endpoint with BitLocker is now able to follow those files around wherever they go. So as soon as I lose my credentials or have my credentials taken off me for some reason, then I can no longer decrypt that data. And if somebody gets it by mistake, for example, I work with a lot of people called Simon. It just also so happens that the person who helped me with my car the other week, his name was also Simon. I happen to have his email address, and I almost sent off some piece of work attachment to him. Now, with enterprise data protection set up, if I had happened to attach that file by mistake, he would have got it. Would have been some nice random ones and zeros, and I wouldn't have had to go and talk to Joe Belfiore about, I managed to disclose some important information. So the second job of enterprise data protection is to prevent this accidental disclosure. So if I do accidentally move from a work document over to Twitter or social networks, I'm warned. And I can say, are you sure you want to do that? And then if I do say yes, then the action is audited. So it's very easy for an enterprise with no app wrapping to push down policies to turn on enterprise data protection. Enterprise data protection is set up by mobile device management. It's set up by System Center. You designate what apps are enterprise apps just through those management servers. And then from then on, the operating system understands how to encrypt that information and then how to warn or to block depending on those management settings. Last but not least, how is it that we protect the endpoint? How is it we start protecting the device so you can only run software that you trust? So, of course, we have secure boot in both the mobile and the desktop. We've had that for some time. So that right from the very first boot sequence all the way through to the main operating system getting up, every part of that boot sequence is signed. So we also need to make sure that you can only run software that you trust. In the phone, Windows Phone, you can only software that is signed from the store, from the App Store, Consumer Store, or from your enterprise will run on that device. And so you can, so it's very difficult in that case, well, it's impossible to get, very difficult to get malicious applications on that device. On Windows, Windows was made in a much kinder, nicer era, first made. People were nicer, software was nicer and friendlier. And the biggest thing you really had to worry about was, is this floppy disk that I'm about to put into my machine okay? And there was tools and things you could run to check that that floppy disk was okay. Nowadays, you can kind of get software from anywhere onto a PC, and you can also get software from anywhere without necessarily knowing that you're getting software. You don't really know if the My Little Pony app is really My Little Pony, or is it some kind of malware cruising around underneath that doing something you don't know about on your PC. So with Windows, we have introduced a feature called Device Guard. Device Guard can either be turned on by your OEM, or it can be turned on by IT with scripts. But this locks down your PC so that it will only run signed applications. It will only run signed applications from the consumer store. It will only run signed applications from the enterprise store. So these are three major things: protecting identity, protecting corporate sensitive data, and then only running software that you trust are some of the key security features which will really help you lock down and protect your users and protect your organizations. So I'm going to ask Simon May to pop up and do a couple of demos. Windows Hello and Device Guard.
Thanks, Kath. Kath, this is your PC.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get there, I'm just going to take a photograph of you.
Okay.
Try and save you some effort.
Jeez.
So we'll just take a quick picture.
Is it a good one? Do you get my right side? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
oh,
I think it's working pretty well.
Okay.
So I'm just going to hold that picture up in front of the sensor because it is a picture of Kath. And it's not seeing anything. Nothing's going to happen here. We can't unlock this PC, which is using Windows Hello. But if Kath just walks straight in front of the machine,
looking for
it's
me.
going to find her.
Got to find me.
Might need to get a little closer.
No. Oh, can recognise me.
recognise.
It's all the lights going on.
Hang on a sec. Let's just move that over to number 6.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it still can't recognise me. Come on, we need you to open so I can do so we can do this demo. There you go. It's all the lights. Okay, so one thing that I didn't show last night, so if I type in hello here, so it's very easy to set up Windows Hello. You can remove your face and you can set it up very quickly. But also we have a setting here saying automatically unlock the screen if we recognise your face. So obviously if you're sitting there working, you don't really want your boss to come in and you quickly lock that computer and then just by smiling at your boss and you happen to look at your computer, it then pops up. Sometimes you really do want to keep what you're doing a wee bit private. So I can turn off this here to automatically unlock the screen. I can turn off automatically unlocking the screen so that if I want to unlock the screen, I have to do a swipe up or an unlock gesture, some sort of swipe up gesture to say, yep, I'm all ready now, you can go ahead and unlock. So I'll quickly show that. So I look for you, I come in, and then I have to swipe up. Come on. Oh, it can't recognise me, it's all these lights. Can't recognise me. Okay, this usually just works beautifully. Okay, one more go, because I really need to unlock this.
Yeah, we do kind of need to get into it.
Come on. No, it's not recognising me right. This is the problem with having a little bit of... Okay, hello, Windows, hello has been blocked. Oh. Okay, I need to sign in with my PIN. Okay, hang on. Oh, what? Okay. No, hang on, I got the right one. There you go. Lucky I have a PIN. Yoo-hoo. So it's usually easier when you don't have all the kind of, I think there's an...
yeah, I'll explain exactly what's just happened there. So we just accidentally saw a really cool feature of Windows Hello.
Really cool.
Really cool. So
I'm glad that didn't happen last night, actually, aren't you?
So there's a reason that just happened to us. We're inside of a theatre, inside of a casino, and the folks that are here want to be able to look at what's happening in the crowd. There's actually an infrared camera up there so that they can see what's happening in the room and see everything that's going on. Now, the technology inside of Windows Hello in this sensor actually uses infrared. So it's throwing infrared light up at Catherine's face, and it's not actually looking at that. When it sees that phone, all it's seeing is a flat surface. There's nothing to bounce the infrared back. So there's nothing there. The exact same case with a piece of paper. It won't see anything. And in fact, we can use different types of ways of fooling it. So you could maybe go and 3D print a face. It doesn't work. It's kind of cool. It really needs it to be a warm human face in order to be able to unlock the technology. But you also saw that accidental issue there, which is very important, because what happens if the sensor malfunctions? What happens if you're in a situation where there is a flood of IR? What happens if you're near the other massive IR source? Anybody know what that is? It's the sun. We see it every single day. So this is going to work really, really well in most situations, but sometimes you're going to need that backup, and that's why we have the access to the PIN. So it's very useful that we saw that. I'm just going to go in and...
It's also very good I remembered my PIN.
Yeah. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to show you something else in action now. This is Device Guard. Now, we're all pretty familiar with the way that malware works these days. We also are all very familiar with the ways that we've traditionally used to kind of intercept and block malware. And that has been a piece of malware software, anti-malware software. The way that anti-malware software works is that we have labs around the world. And those labs are out there looking for malware, and as soon as they spot something, they start to reverse engineer it and work out a way to fix it, get it off the machine. And that goes into a malware signature. The other thing that happens is that Microsoft starts working on a patch for the operating system. Unfortunately, by the time that we get those two things released, there's lots of infections out there. And that's the idea of a zero-day exploit, the fact that it's been released before there's any kind of patch or any kind of fix. So we need something inside of the operating system to deal with that. And that's where Device Guard comes in. So this is a Windows 7 machine, as you can see. And I've got an email open here, and it's from my Contoso IT department, so I'm going to trust it, just like your normal user would do. And there's a link to say download now. Takes me across to a nice website. It's looking good. I'm going to say download, because I really do want to be able to use this expenses app. I always like to get the money back that I've spent on stuff. Okay, now like most people, I'm going to say yes to the user account control message, because everybody just ignores it anyway. Notice something has just happened in the background for the Eagle Eyes menu. It just turned off my Windows Defender. My anti-malware just got turned off. My firewall just got turned off. My PC just got owned by whoever had created that website. That's a zero-day exploit in action. That's exactly what these folks tried to do. So what I'm going to do now, I show you the same thing, but on a Windows 10 desktop. So I'm going to show you, let me just go and get the firewall open at the same time as Device Guard. Whoops, right there we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to go straight to the same website, go and hit run. Probably going to take a couple of seconds for the security. Oh, look at that. I got an error. But read the error. It's telling me that Device Guard blocked this because it violated code integrity policy. In other words, we have a Device Guard policy in place which says that if the application hasn't been signed by Microsoft or signed by your enterprise, then we're not going to allow it to run. Just let that sink in for a second. This means that you can bring an application, have it signed, and it will work, but nothing else will. It makes things very, very secure. So that's Device Guard in action, and that's also how we've built Windows Hello to be able to kind of work around those little situations that you might face in everyday, day-to-day situations.
Okay, thank you, Simon. So let's keep going. So manage for continuous innovation. As we talked about earlier, there's really a constant need for us to keep evolving our software and to provide you and your users the latest and the greatest so you can innovate on your business. So when we think about managing for continuous innovation, it's really speaking to Windows as a service, but it's also speaking to your ability to manage Windows and manage the endpoints on your network. So let's jump in here. First of all, as we talked about last night and demoed last night, we really understand and felt the pain of IT constantly having to wipe and reload to move from Windows, from one Windows operating system to the next. So those days have gone. We've had a huge effort in Windows 10 to enable in-place upgrades. So you literally at the push of a button you can move Windows 7 PCs, Windows 8 PCs, all the way through to a Windows 10. And it's actually a really quick, unbelievably quick experience actually. I happened to set off a upgrade of one of my 8 machines last week. For some reason I found a machine sitting around under my desk and I thought, I haven't used this for a while, I might as well update it. And I updated it and I left my office and I came back and I looked at it and I had to look twice, say, are you really updated? Because it just worked. I set it off, it just worked. And we've done a ton of work with ensuring that we have application compatibility issues ironed out. We've upgraded 75 million consumer devices. We've worked relentlessly with the Insider program, with our own MSIT, with other big corporations to ensure that we have ironed out as many application compatibility issues as we possibly can. Somebody came to talk to me last night and said, hey, I think there's an app compat issue with Foo app or something. And well, oh, we've never heard of that. Please tell us. Please let us know. So if you're finding any application compatibility issues, please tell us. We're working on it day in, day out. It will continue to be a massive focus for us. So we've made it very simple to get from Windows 7, Windows 8 through to Windows 10. The second piece of feedback we got from organizations was it was taking too much time and too much IT touch to get new devices out to people. And as I demoed last night, it's incredibly fast out of the box to take a retail PC and with dynamic provisioning, move that into an enterprise-ready PC just by putting my username, just by putting my password, and because MSIT have second factor authentication, getting a phone call. And it's incredibly fast. I had a presentation to do at work a couple of weeks ago, and I decided just for fun I would put a new image on a PC, and my presentation was at 8 o'clock. I started provisioning my new PC at 7, and by 8 o'clock I was able to sit there and give a presentation to several VPs without actually having to do particularly much, just put in my username and password. And it was a really delightful experience. I had everything I needed pushed onto that device for me. So a lot of work around application compatibility and dynamic provisioning and making it much easier to deploy, because we don't want your IT to be mucking around trying to deploy. We want your IT and people to get up and running very, very quickly. Second thing we've focused on is simplifying device management. So in the Windows 8 timeframe, there was a different device management stack on Windows. Desktop, there was another device management stack on the Windows Phone. So as an enterprise, you had to have 2 different management servers. You had to have, from a management point of view, you had to use a different protocol. There was different management capabilities between both Windows and Phone. In Windows 10 timeframe, we have one management stack, one mobile device management stack. We basically have the same management endpoints and the management capabilities on each device. We're working very closely with Intune and the Enterprise Mobility Suite at Microsoft. We also have done tons of work with third-party mobile device management vendors so that Windows 10 can fit into the network that you have today, into the back-end infrastructure that you have today. Now, a lot of the discussions that we have in Windows 10 is really focusing on mobile device management, because that's a new work that we have done. Of course, if you're using System Center, if you're using Group Policy, that management infrastructure will still work, and Windows 10 will fit straight into that management infrastructure as well. So whatever you decide to use, whether it's a mobile device management on its own, whether it's System Center, whether it's Group Policy, or some blend of the two, Windows 10 will fit into whatever back-end infrastructure that you have. Last but not least, we're really focusing on how do we embrace this mobile-first, cloud-first world. And so we have enabled one of the biggest things that we have been asked for is the Azure Cloud Identity on phone. We're enabling that on phone. We're making it much faster to get through the Azure setup on PC, as I showed last night. If you're using Office 365, that's just the same Azure ID you use for an Azure Active Directory join. And we're really introducing an enterprise class cloud so that you can have your identity in the cloud, or you can continue having it on-prem with domain join, or you can have some blend of the two, whatever is useful for your environment, whatever you need for your users. If they are more mobile, you may want them to have be more tended towards the Azure Active Directory. If they're more on-prem, you may find it's right to have domain join. Secondly, we had universal Windows applications. In this mobile-first world, you really need to make sure that users, whatever device they happen to have the same applications available across the suite of devices, whether it be a small phone, whether it be Surface Hub, or somewhere in between. And so with universal Windows apps, it's making it much simpler to develop an application for your business and have it run all the way across any of the devices that your users or you have to be productive on. Last but not least, we have focused some work on the Windows Store for Business. It was one of the big piece of feedback that we got was that enterprises wanted us to help provide a Windows Store, and they wanted a place to be able to go and get their users to acquire or pull down approved work apps, as opposed to having to host that on their own. So very quickly, want to introduce the Business Store. We've done some work to provide a storefront designed for organizations. It is the exact same place that you go to the store to get a consumer app. But once you have Azure Active Directory set up on that device, then you can expose a store tab in the regular store so that you can go and get a private business store where your users can go and get any apps that you happen to acquire for them or they're approved for their use. The second thing is it's very easy to acquire, manage and deploy applications, and it's super simple for your users. If they have a work ID only on the device, then they will see that business store. You may have a blend of both work and personal identities on the device, in which case they'll also be able to get to the consumer store. Of course, using mobile device management tools, you can also restrict what they see in the consumer store if that's right for them. So Simon's is going to pop up and demo the business store and also do a demo for you on single sign-on.
Okay, so let's get this switched over to the correct machine. Well, hey, okay. So, I'm going to start off from the same point where you saw Kath inside of the keynote yesterday. This is the out-of-box experience for Windows 10, and I'm being asked to decide on this Windows 10 Pro machine who owns my particular device. So I'm going to say my organization, hit next. Now it's going to ask me what we're going to connect to. I can either choose to do everything as I would do, say, yesterday on my on-premises domain. All of that stuff is just going to work. But in this case, I'm going to go and use Azure Active Directory, and we'll say next. Now, if you're on Office 365, you've already got Azure Active Directory. It's going to ask me for my username. In this case, my username is Laurie, and I'm going to use aadwin10 mdm.onmicrosoft.com, and I'm going to type in my password. This organization hasn't actually customized the sign-on screen, so unlike in the keynote yesterday, I don't get redirected to that. And then we'll say sign in. Type in the correct password. Okay, and now it's going through the process. This is a live out-of-box experience, and I'm not cutting any time here. So it's going to do the enrollment. We're then going to see it go through the usual out-of-box experience for Windows 10. So Windows 10 is going to do what it always does. It's going to be nice and friendly. It's going to say hello. And then it's going to say, we're going to set things up for you. It's not going to take too long. We hope. And we're done. So that's the out-of-box experience for Windows 10, running through from the end, from start to finish. But we've also set this up so that we're going to provision Microsoft Passport on this device. So the very first thing that it's going to do is say, hey, you need to set a work PIN. We'll say create PIN. And then it's going to take me to a screen where it's going to ask to do multi-factor authentication. And in this case, it's going to send me a text message to my phone. Which as soon as I receive it, in a second or two, there we go, I can just type in the code. So one-time use code, 760717, whoops, 760717, and hit next. So what we're actually doing here is we're making Azure Active Directory trust this machine. So a couple of little things that you can do in the background. Say your users lose their PC. That would be terrible. It's got all their creds on it. You can actually go into Azure Active Directory and block the machine. That machine can no longer exercise the credentials that are stored on it. They actually won't even be able to sign in to that machine. I'm going to set myself a personalized PIN. And the reason that the PIN is secure in this case is because the PIN is only usable on the device. Using it anywhere else is not going to work. Okay, so now we have our secure credentials, and Windows has come into the point where I can almost start to do things. Just going to wait for the clock to appear on the taskbar. This is a slightly later build of Windows than RTM, and as a result, we just need to let one of the little bugs that we've got run through for a second or two. But whilst that's running, I'm just going to show you that some policy is actually already applied to this machine. If I go into settings, you'll see that we've already disabled Cortana by company policy. So we decided that we didn't want to be able to use the Cortana Assistant on this machine. It's part of our company policy not to allow voice assistants, so we've already done that. Now we're being asked to enforce more policies. So things like making sure that we have a PIN which is secure enough, making sure that the device is actually encrypted inside of itself, so we have BitLocker turned on. Okay, I'm going to go and start to run up Internet Explorer. There we go, all the other stuff's loading. Say no. Okay, now remember, all we've done here is we've just connected to Azure Active Directory. I'm going to go ahead and type in http://outlook.office365.com. We're going to go to my Office 365 Outlook. Notice what doesn't happen. No speed bump. I didn't get asked to sign in again. My machine is trusted by Azure Active Directory. I'm automatically able to access everything which Azure Active Directory trusts. So that means Office 365. It means that I can go to the waffle and I can instantly go and have a look at my calendar and other areas. I should actually have loaded slightly more than that by now. I can also go to any other applications which are connected to Azure Active Directory. Now, out of the box, Azure AD supports 2,500 applications that can just be connected within 3 clicks with full federation. So it gives you a very, very powerful single sign-on experience right out of the box. And we've just set that up from getting hold of a new PC through to being able to access everything with seamless single sign-on in literally minutes. That's pretty incredible. Let's take a look at the business store now, the Windows Store for Business. This is probably one of the first times we've ever actually shown this. So this is the Windows Store for Business. And this is what I like about this is it's going to turn IT people into shoppers. We're all going to be able to go and shop for apps on behalf of our users. So in this case, I can go into, say, Word, and it's going to ask me to reauth again here. Oh. And I don't have the password saved there. Okay. What I can then do is actually take that application and assign it out to my users. And once I've assigned the application to my users, it will appear inside of the consumer store. So now, as an end user, I can just go in. I can see that on here I have an additional option to sign into the store for Contoso Inc. And obviously, I don't get a sign-on screen because the PC is already trusted by Azure Active Directory and therefore by the Windows Store. And you can see the applications that I found in the store and given to this particular user. So here you can see that I can go and get hold of the Dynamics CRM application and install it. Although I don't think I can because I think I might already have that one. Let's try this one. There we go. I can go ahead and get the Dynamics CRM application for Windows 8. It'll go and install it onto that machine for me. Nice. That's all that's required in order to be able to get hold of an application. If I'm using, say, Configuration Manager or Intune or any other MDM, then they can integrate with the store so that they can be used to push applications down to your end users. Or, one of the nice things about this, you can use it for license management, so you can understand who's using a particular application. Not only that, if I want to stop people from using an application, I can revoke their license to it. So say somebody leaves my organization, I now have a way to control license allocation, and I can take away licenses as soon as somebody leaves. Okay. So let's take us back to number 5. There we go.
Okay, so I think it's worthwhile spending a little bit of time talking about Windows as a service and why it's really so important. So we've really moved from a time where upgrade cycles are long and that it could be years between when you get one release from Microsoft and when we give you the next release. So really what we're hearing from our organizations is and customers, they want the functionality faster, and particularly from the end users, they want the new functionality faster. And we also want to be able to respond to any feedback we get a lot faster. And with the BYOD world, people and end users really are expecting to update very quickly all the time. But from an IT point of view, your adoptions have different needs. And in one case, you really need to have agility. You need to know what's coming next. You need to have access to the latest technology. You need to have transparency to our roadmap. And you need to have enterprise-grade capabilities to help you innovate on your businesses. And also, you need the flexibility for mixed environments. On the other hand, you've got certain systems where you need absolute control. You need absolute stability. You need no upgrades. You need a very long support life cycle. And you need to make sure sure you understand our support lifecycle. So across your organizations, there's a real tension between control and agility and exactly what different systems in your organization might need. So we take a quick look here is why we think Windows as a service is so important. On one hand here you have consumer devices. Consumers expect that their devices are up to date all the time. They want the latest and greatest. They don't necessarily want to think about when upgrades are coming. They just want the latest on their phones. And so from a consumer point of view, we have a branch called the Current branch, which is always keeping consumer devices up to date. And there's a diversity of hundreds of millions of consumers, there's lots and lots of devices, and we're constantly putting the latest innovation onto those devices. And we're very, very actively listening to consumers, listening to the feedback, and making changes as needed. As Laura said last night, since we have upgraded Windows, upgraded to Windows 10 and released Windows 10, we've had several fixes and several small updates go out after that, responding to feedback from the 75 million users to figure out how we can improve Windows and the Windows that they have on their devices right now. On the other end of the spectrum, you really have special systems. You have hospitals, you have air traffic controls, you have emergency rooms, etc. And those systems can't afford to be updated so quickly. They really need to be very stable. They need the latest security updates to keep them safe and protected, but they need to be stable. And so really the question we asked ourselves is, why is it that consumers need to be stuck in the middle of these, why is it the business users need to be really caught in the middle of these consumers and the secure and stable systems, and why is it the consumers need to be able to either be on a 10-year branch, or why is it the business users can't afford to be upgraded quite so quickly? So for business users, we have introduced a new branch called Current Branch for Business. The Current Branch for Business comes out later than the Current Branch for consumers, but it updates more quickly than our long-term servicing branch. And the long-term servicing branch is where you need those specialized systems. So let me walk you through how this happens. So we're really focused on getting quality. We're focused on market-driven quality. We're focused on getting lots of feedback from people to see how things are going. So the very first time a new feature comes out, it'll go to our engineering teams and the engineering builds. There's fast and slow rings for that engineering build. So if you're somebody like me, I want to have the latest and greatest all the time, and I don't care if I have to reflash my phone, I'm on the fast ring. And as soon as the people in the fast ring are happy, we'll send it out to the slower ring of the engineering builds. Once our engineering team, and we're giving feedback all the time and poking each other if something doesn't seem right or seems a bit bumpy. Once the engineering team is happy with our particular build, we'll roll it out to the broad Microsoft team, and we will wait to roll that out until we think that the broad Microsoft team are going to find that build stable enough that they can update their retail devices, that they can update the devices that they work on all day, every day. Again, with broad Microsoft, there's tens of thousands of people who are giving feedback. There's slow and fast rings here, so we can roll it out slowly across the organization. And we're really fixating on any of the major problems or the major quirks in the user experience that people are giving feedback on. And we'll fix that, and we'll keep it in this Microsoft internal validation until we feel happy to roll it out to the Business Insider Preview. And the Microsoft Insider Preview is what many of you will be on today. There's both fast and slow rings of the Insider Preview, and we listen to feedback. We want feedback. We were looking at all those user feedback and all the comments that you're sending, all the enormous building high comments that Laura mentioned last night. And that really will go on for 4 to 6 months as we watch and we look and we continuously provide new updates to Windows Insider. As soon as we feel good about that, we will release to the Current Branch. So that was essentially what happened on July 29 for Windows 10. We released the Current Branch, and in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we've updated 75 million PCs onto the Current Branch. And we're listening and we're watching and we're getting the feedback and we're doing tweaks to make sure that those releases are okay. So as you think about your business and how you may want to start deploying Windows, you really can start some of your people in the Windows Insider preview branch. And if you're seeing app compat issues or seeing any issues, give us feedback. We want to make sure we are fixing it. Then some of your early adopters, you may want to have some of your early adopters on the current branch and see how that works for your businesses. Then last but not least, about 4 months later, we will release a build, once we're happy with the current branch, we'll release a build called Current Branch for Business. And that will run, and that gives you around about 8 months to move your current branch for business users onto the current branch. And those are the business user, kind of business user people in your organization who need to have relative stability, but you also want them on the latest and greatest faster than those who are sitting on a long-term servicing branch. Now, the thing about the current branch is you can treat your current branch exactly how we at Microsoft are treating our upgrades. You can define rings of people, and you can roll out the current branch slowly across your organization to check that it's rolling out okay. So you will set up your own rings and get people moving over to the current branch one by one or group by group so that you can make sure that the rollout goes smoothly. So all the while, lots of customer validation, lots of feedback, and we will continue to update and fix anything any major issues that we're hearing. So with that said, I think I'm going to skip through being more productive. Joe actually spent a lot of time on that last night. So in terms of getting your organizations ready for Windows 10, upgrade your personal devices, start piloting Windows 10 in your organization. I really encourage you to become a Windows Insider. It's actually quite fun, but also then your voice ends up helping us and the product team develop and tweak our features to make sure that we are giving you what you need for your organization. And last but not least, give us the feedback. We really appreciate it, and we love to have it. So Simon's got a couple of giveaways here. There are some related Ignite sessions. Michael Niehaus has a couple of sessions. Simon has a couple of sessions. Of course, I will be at the pub, or whatever it is, at the happy hour. It's the hub, not the pub. There you go, I'll be at the hub. At the happy hour late tonight, as will Simon, and I'll be there tomorrow night, and of course closing drinks. If there's drinks around, I'll be there. And of course, there's lots of resources that you can have here. Evaluate the session. Apparently you can win something. I really encourage you to rate the session high. I love coming back to New Zealand. If I get a good rating, that means I might be asked back next year. So with that said, thank you very much, and we're going to give away some things.